deployment. So one thing you may have noticed when we got to React versus the other things we built prior to that is that we are actually running a web server now. When we visit this, we have to go to localhost on some port, as opposed to seeing file : / something, because you can't just double click an index HTML and have React work. And that's because it's doing a bunch of AJAX stuff in the background. And we know what AJAX is, right? It's asynchronously loading in new content. You don't have to refresh the whole page to change what's on the screen, right? So React is for building single page apps. We never actually leave the page. We never do a full page refresh, but the stuff that's on screen changes all the time. That's because it's doing a bunch of asynchronous HTTP requests in the background. So it is important that they're actually HTTP requests. You don't load stuff from the file system over HTTP. You know, that's the protocol that you see at the beginning of a URL if browsers showed that anymore. This is really HTTP : / localhost 3000. And if we did it from the file system, just like loading an HTML page, it would be file : //. So if I look at my dev tools real quick, and I look at the network tab, I can see all the HTML or the HTTP requests being made. Let's move this back to the right. Okay, let's refresh the page. Okay, we've got a ton of HTTP requests already. Let's switch over to the XHR tab. XHR, you may remember from a slideshow 2 weeks ago, is the more formal name of AJAX. XML HTTP request. Doesn't really have anything to do with XML, but that's the name for the technology that makes more requests without refreshing the whole page. So there have been 2 of them already. Let's add another one. What happens if I try to save this? Well, it doesn't show up here, but something happened. But that one happens over a WebSocket, so that's not going to show up here because that's a Firebase thing. So what if we add thing? That's still not showing up in this list. Because everything's kind of loading at the beginning. Why do we not load it? Show things in here? We really should. We sign out. Sign in. Holy smokes, now there's a bunch of stuff. But even though I opened up a pop-up, nothing actually, the page did not refresh. All that happened was one little box showed up. But all these HTTP requests happened. Because it's doing this in the background kind of all the time. Because you may remember, we have a whole lot of HTML files, right? Or a lot, well, they're all JavaScript files, but we only load them as needed. Now, part of the reason it didn't have to XHR them in is because we started logged in. What if we start logged out? Then we won't have all the components showing at once. So let's refresh the page. Okay, now I only see this, whatever that is. That's my socket. Sign in with GitHub. See a bunch of HTTP requests. They all seem to be Google APIs. Let's go ahead and clear this list and see what, well, that's too late now if we've cleared it. Anyway, we can load in more content without refreshing the entire page because there's a bunch of XHR happening in the background. And there's a bunch of WebSocket stuff too, which is way beyond the scope of the class. In the project Seth's going to do with you today, you'll learn how to make AJAX requests manually instead of just letting the library handle it for you. So this isn't a terribly complicated application. And it's really easy to deploy and to host somewhere because it's just a static website. You don't need a fancy backend. You can just have the simplest backend possible where all it does is send the file that you asked for. So let's see how we might do that in this case. If we actually look at our directory, we have our README, we have our source directory, and we have a bunch of other stuff. Oh, there we go. There's actually tons of files in here, most of them that we never touched, right? Wow, that's a lot. If you don't have the tree command, but you do have Homebrew installed on a Mac, do brew install tree, and you'll have it. It's pretty nice. So let's look here. Basically, at the top level, we have node modules, public, source, and these files. Most of these files are not actually needed to run the website. They're mostly needed to develop it. Can anybody guess which of those things is actually necessary to copy over to a web server to run this thing? There's actually only one thing in this view. Source is a good guess. But what's that? Public. Yeah, so source is what we work on. Public is what actually gets, what a web server actually needs to serve this thing. So when we run yarn start or npm start, our web server automatically sort of simulates that public folder. And that's why when we make changes, they reflect instantly in the browser because it has a script that's watching for our changes that automatically rebuilds the thing. Because if you may recall, JSX isn't actually supported by web browsers. So the server can't just send JSX, even though that's what we're writing. So we have Babel that compiles this thing for us. So what we want to do is basically run Babel and whatever else we need to generate plain old JavaScript that can be sent to a browser. And Create React App takes care of the hard work for us. We don't have to do much as long as we run the yarn scripts. So let's see what else we can do. If we look at package.json at the bottom, in addition to all our dependencies and dev dependencies, we have some scripts. Start, we've been running this whole time. We also have build, test, and eject. So build is what I'm talking about. That's going to actually generate the real JavaScript that the web browser can understand. And that's happening in the background all the time when we run yarn start. But we need to run it if we're going to deploy it. So let's run yarn build. In NPM, it's Npm Run Build. Npm start works, but if you run any other scripts other than start with Npm, you have to say run. By the way, the new version of Npm was released last week, maybe on Friday. And it now does the -- save thing automatically. So you no longer have to put -- save to add it to your package.json when you do npm install. So if anyone's still using npm, if you update it to 5.0, you get that for free. Let's try yarn build. Oh yeah, that's right. It's a build directory. It's just not even there at the beginning. It's not public. Public is for static stuff. So the public folder is for stuff that should not be processed before it's deployed. But it's the build directory that you actually want to copy to a server. Sorry, I lied. So for example, style sheets, like just plain old style sheets, or even plain JavaScript assets could go in the public directory. All right, so, okay, it did some stuff and now it's telling us a bunch of crap. All right, creating an optimized production build, compiled successfully. File sizes after gzip, this big. That's not very big considering how much stuff is in this directory. Let's see how much is in this directory. Yeah, okay. Enough of Steve. We like him and all, and his project was real neat. But we have other things to do. All right, so let me get info on this. Thing list. All right, 160.5 megs. That's how big my thing list directory is. My optimized production build, that was 160 megs, remember. My optimized production build is 136K plus 818 bytes. Bytes. So almost nothing. All our JavaScript together compressed down to 136K. So this should load really fast. And notice there's only two files. There's one JavaScript file and one CSS file. So it took all our separate JavaScript files, converted them from JSX to real JavaScript, and then put them all in one big file and minified them. I used that word in the first week to describe the process of compressing it to be as small as it could possibly be. And then besides, the web server is configured to use something called gzip, so it's even smaller than that. This project was built assuming it is hosted at the server root. What that means is, davestruce.com, not davestruce.com/something. To override this, specify the home page in your package JSON. For example, add this to build it for GitHub Pages. Ooh, GitHub Pages, that sounds neat. So if you have a static website, you can host it on GitHub for free, assuming that the code is up there too. So let's learn how to do that. Now, Create React App actually has some features built in for this, so it's even easier than it is ordinarily. And it's pretty easy without Create React App. So add this home page to your package JSON. Look at the format here. myname.github.io/myapp. So this is GitHub Pages. Let's go to GitHub Pages. Websites for you and your project, hosted directly from your GitHub repository. Just edit, push, and your changes are live. So if you want to do it manually, you can read all about it here. That almost make it sound harder than it is. Basically what you have to do, we haven't talked much about Git branches, but you've been working mostly off of branches called master, and that's the default. But you can have more than one copy of your entire project in your Git repository, which if you were working with other team members on the same project, you might each create a new branch for what you're working on so that you don't screw up other people's stuff. And you might push it up to that. And then when you're ready to put that all together in a release, you merge it back to the master branch or to another branch, depending on the way your team works. So how GitHub Pages works is you create a separate branch for GitHub Pages to use. That way you can have your entire source on your master branch, but only what's in your build folder on the branch that GitHub Pages is going to look at. And again, you don't need to know all this to use it with Create React App because it makes it so easy. Let's just follow the little instructions that they gave us. Okay, our home page. Let's do it like that. So mine is, let's see. So open up package, this is package JSON up here. So there is no homepage key, so let's add one. I'll put it right under name and version. Homepage, colon, don't forget your comma at the end. And remember, this is JSON, not JavaScript, so you have to double quote everything. So let's put HTTP, colon, // your GitHub username. So XTBCS1 in this case, .github.io, not com. GitHub Pages is hosted at github.io, / the name of your repository. So if you named it something funny, make sure you put it what it's called here. Mine is just thing list. And this is not optional if you want to deploy to GitHub Pages. All right, I will save that. And then what? All right, the build folder is ready to be deployed. So if we just had a plain old web server, we could just copy it right over with FTP or something. Anybody have other websites that they manage that way, that they use FTP? Yeah. All right. So next, we do have to add a GitHub Pages npm package. So let's run yarn add gh pages. npm install --save gh pages. Unless you upgraded to 5.0 on Friday, which you probably haven't. And we have added yarn information to the setup instructions, by the way, on the website. Did that the other day. So let's look at this build folder that we created when we ran that build script. All right, we got all our fave icons and stuff, index HTML, and then in the static we have CSS and JS, and you'll see 2 files in each, whatever.css and whatever.map. So map is a file that helps us debug when there's a problem in the browser on a particular line of code. Remember, our JS file has now been compressed to this monstrous one-line file. But that source map file, the browser can use to tell what line of code it's really from and give us some information to help us debug it. And it's something that we just get for free when you use Create React App. Let's build again. Yarn build or npm run build. Ooh, it said more this time because we added GH pages. All right, tells us the same thing about our file sizes. This project was built assuming it was hosted at thing list. You can control this with the homepage field in your package.json. It said at the project root before. Now it says this because of the change we made to package.json. The build folder is ready to be deployed. To publish it at XTBC S1. Is it 17S1? It's 17S1, isn't it? So let's run that again. So it's turning our JSX into real JavaScript, compiling all our CSS into a single file. All right. Build folder is ready to be deployed there. To do that, run yarn add dev. Yeah, we could have done dev or save dev on npm. Add the following script in your package.json. Okay, so we need 2 more scripts in our file. Pre-deploy and deploy. So down here in the scripts section, just copy these 2 lines exactly as they appear here. Don't forget your comma after eject, and add pre-deploy and deploy. So all we need to deploy this to GitHub Pages now is to run yarn deploy or npm run deploy. And it'll automatically run the pre-deploy script because that's how it works. If you say pre in the name of a step, then it'll always run that before it runs this. So we don't even have to run build manually anymore. All we have to do is GH pages -d build. And it will build and deploy. All we need to do is yarn deploy or npm run deploy. And it will automatically run build, and then it'll run this GH pages command. So let's see it happen. Too good to be true. Yarn deploy. So creating an optimized production build. That's what we got when we ran yarn build. Now we see it's running GH pages -d build. Done. So let's look at our home page up here. It was this. If we did everything right, it should be there. Holy smokes, it's there on the real internet. How do you like that? Content is cached for offline use. Sign in with GitHub. Now we got a problem. Well, it's an error. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to have to wait until Seth tells me what to do, right? No, read the error and see if you can figure it out. unauthorized domain. This domain is not authorized. Console auth. Okay, let's read this whole message. This domain is not authorized to run this operation. Add it to the Oauth redirect domains list in the Firebase console auth section sign-in method tab. That's really specific. Firebase console, you know about that. Auth section sign-in method tab. The Oauth redirect domains list. Okay, here I am on Firebase. Here's the auth section. Here's sign-in method. There's my sign-in providers, scrolly. Oauth redirect domains. So this is a security thing. So if someone tries to run your stuff from a different server, your Firebase console will not allow them to do that. So right now we have localhost authorized automatically and Firebase itself. So let's add a domain. What's our domain? GitHub.io. That's where we deployed it. So we have to tell it, if you receive a request for this app from GitHub.io, that's okay for authentication. Having done that, if we go back to our GitHub hosted version of this, try again. Yeah, it still says that. Let's refresh. Maybe give it a second. There we go. All right, I'm logged in. And there's my data. And look at this. I'm out here on the real, actual, for sure web. Pretty neat. And you can be too. So I did a lot of explaining, but what I actually did was very simple. Step one really is just add this home page. If you add the home page to point to your website, and again, you could just run yarn build and it'll tell you to add your home page in that format. Then if you build again, it'll tell you to add the GH pages npm package. We didn't have to know that. It told us if we built again after changing the package JSON. And then it's just a matter of copying those two commands and typing build, or deploy, rather. Pretty easy. Now, there are other free hosts. There are others that work really well with this stuff. And if you look at the README for Get React or Create React app, it gives you instructions for lots of different ones. And you may remember this README was the default README when you created a new app with Create React app. Or you could just, search for Create React app, and you'll find a GitHub page with the README. So if we just scroll to the top. That's a big README. Table of contents. Blah, 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 blah. A lot of good stuff in there, by the way. You should totally read it. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Deployment. All right. Look at all these choices. Hot dog. Firebase. Well, gosh, we're already using Firebase. Install the Firebase CLI, the command line interface, if you haven't already, by running npm install-g Firebase tools. Sounds like a good idea. npm install-g Firebase tools. If you want to do it with yarn, it's yarn global or dash global. I think it's just global. Add Firebase tools. So by doing an npm install-g or a yarn global add, instead of installing it in this one project, it installs it across your machine so that you can use that tool from anywhere. And what does it say to do next? Wrong window. Run Firebase Login and log in with your previously created Firebase account. From your project directory. Firebase Login. Allow Firebase to connect anonymous usage information. Nah. Okay, visit this URL on any device to log in. I'm opening it in a web browser that's over here on my other screen. So you little weasels, don't try to hacksaw me. Okay, login successful. Good. Oops, I keep going to the wrong thing. All right, then run Firebase init command from your project's root. You need to choose the hosting, configure, and deploy Firebase hosting sites, and choose the Firebase project you created in the previous step. You'll need to agree with database rules blah blah being created. Choose build as the public directory and agree to configure as a single page app by replying with Y. That sounds difficult. Let's see. Let's see how easy it actually is. Firebase init, a lot like git init. Oh man, look at that. It's some fire. Man, kids and their fire emoji. Oh, we got a question mark in there. You're about to initialize a Firebase project in this directory. Which Firebase CLI features do you want to set up for this folder? Press space to select features, then enter to confirm your choice. We already have a database, functions, it's hosting we want. Right? Hosting, enter. Okay. Select a default Firebase project for this directory. Use arrow keys. We could probably use thing list afternoon. My base.js is actually pointing to the afternoon in this class too. What do you want to use as your public directory? And it defaults to public, but we know it's build. Build. Configure as a single page app. Rewrite all URLs to index HTML. Yes. Doesn't matter so much in this one, but it'll matter on the one that Seth's going to build with you. And it's actually going to make GitHub Pages a little more complicated, but Firebase will work. Okay, build index HTML already exists. Overwrite. Okay. Firebase initialization complete. Cool. Yeah. Now after you create a production build with Npm Run Build, you can deploy it by running Firebase deploy. So let's build it again. Yarn build. We could deploy it to GitHub Pages with our deploy script, or we could run Firebase deploy and see what happens. Preparing build directory for upload, blah blah blah. Deploy complete. Hosting URL. There we go. It's kind of a big, long, nasty URL, but it's there. If you want to go into your console and make it a little friendlier URL, you can. Let's check it out. Hey, it looks just like it. Uh-oh. Something got screwed up in our deploy. There's my JS. Well, something's not quite right. So I'll troubleshoot this and get back to you on the Firebase deploy because it's not quite working. And we need to move on. So anyway, it was easy, even though it didn't work. So we'll figure out why it didn't work later. But GitHub Pages work just fine. If you just had an FTP server somewhere, you could just copy it on over and it should just work. Cool.